Okay, call to order the meeting of the East Grand Forks City July 22nd, 2025. Megan, could you take the roll call, please?
Mayor Marcolson?
Here.
Council President Brian Larson, Council Vice President Teri.
Here.
Council Members Tammy Schumacher.
Here.
Ben Pachivinsky.
Here.
Tom Helms.
Here.
Donald Casey.
Here.
Karen Peterson.
Here.
Okay, recognizing a quorum, we'll right to number one, residential refuse contract transfer, Mr. Stordahl.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President and Council. Here tonight to talk about our residential refuse contract. We have with us tonight Rachel, owner of Countrywide Sanitation, and Randy Ott from Waste Management. Rachel is selling her company to Waste Management. So they will be taking over the contract for the city around the September 1st date. Countrywide Sanitation's been serving the city since 2014, so about the past 11 years. Really done a really good job for the city. And so we're looking at having council sign a consent to assignment document, which will make this transfer happen. There really shouldn't be anything different with the services. My understanding is it'll be the same trucks and even probably the same employees for right now. Is that still correct, Rachel? So the service, the number to call in as well, that'll be the same, correct? If anybody has any complaints or needs to change on a container, whatnot. And so hopefully it'll be a seamless transition when they come in. So I guess I'll open it up for questions for either myself or Randy or Rachel.
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, I guess we're good.
I just wanted to say, Mayor Olsted and members of the council, I want to thank you for your continued support and the opportunity to serve you through our sanitation services. We've always taken pride in providing reliable and responsive and community-focused service, and we are grateful for your relationship that we've built along the way with you. And then again, after much consideration, I'm selling this to Waste Management. It wasn't a decision that I took lightly. And it's not a retirement announcement for me. I am stepping away. I'm not stepping away entirely. I'm going to continue to run our landfill operations and storage container rental business. And so those aspects of my business will remain unchanged. We will continue to manage the sanitation business and roll-off hauling business until the expected closing date of September 1st, as Jason stated. And it's been a privilege to serve you, and we sincerely appreciate your trust in us. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Rachel. I think our history goes back years and years and years, so I appreciate the service that you provided the city. Hopefully it'll continue with Waste Management, and I guess we know who to call if it isn't. But I do appreciate the service you provided. Thank you. And I'm assuming this goes through 29, right? Yep. Okay. So, wonderful. Go ahead.
Yeah. I certainly answer any questions that you may have. Like he said, it's going to be the same driver. It's going to be the same truck, same service days. We are not seeing any change needed at this time. We're going to leave it as is and follow the contract that you have with Countrywide Sanitation and Rachel.
Else? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to number 2, review a microtransit feasibility design and implementation plan. Teri, Kouba. She's over there, isn't she? Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Randy. I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Teri Kouba with the Forks MPO. I'm here about the microtransit. I also have Aaron Bartling online with overall presentation of this plan. I just wanted to let you know this is one of the findings or suggested studies that we had with our transit development plan, and we're hoping that it's something that everybody is really interested in doing, and we're here to help find and fund it along the way. So I'll let Aaron present. I do have Eric here as well. He did a lot of the public input on this.
I had a request to share my screen. I'm not sure who's in control of that, but if possible, I would like to be able to share the presentation. Otherwise, Teri, I could send it your way. There we go. Can everyone see that and hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So good evening. Like Teri said, my name is Aaron Bartling. I am a senior transit planner for Bolton and Mink and the project manager for the Microtransit Feasibility Design and Implementation Plan. And I'm excited to walk through a draft of the final plan with you all here tonight. I'll kind of touch on an overview of the process, what the intent of the plan was, but really get into what the recommendations were and how we've set up an implementation guide to help keep this moving forward once this plan is approved. So just a brief overview on the process overall. So essentially the plan was a feasibility analysis and implementation plan for microtransit service looking at the Grand Forks, East Grand Forks region. And there are three key phases overall to the process, starting with evaluation and feasibility. This was essentially an existing conditions analysis for different what we're calling opportunity zones that had been identified in the transit development plan, but also just we added one additional just based on some of the insight and understanding of the region as well to look at and ultimately design, which is the second phase where we refined what those boundaries are and ran some simulation work based on different alternatives to understand what potential ridership could be in these different areas and really help set some parameters for what we would want microtransit service to look like in the region. And then the final phase that we just wrapped up is the implementation side of things, where we set up a clear step-by-step strategy to help on the implementation side of things. So overall timeline, we're coming up on a year since we started this study. So started last fall with that initial evaluation feasibility analysis, and then through the winter months and into the spring is where we focus on the design and then implementation and setting up the action plan. And we're here today to present the final plan, and we'll be going for approval through the MPO committees next month. So just to kind of lay the groundwork for what microtransit is, it's a new service concept for the region. Other regions have been exploring this and starting to implement it in recent years, but essentially it's an app-based service similar to an Uber or Lyft that's open for anyone to use a service, and you typically have a fleet of vehicles that can just roam throughout the zone that you have identified. And then once you book a ride, pickups typically range in the 10 to 25 minute range from when you hit request ride on your phone or you call in through the call-in option to when a vehicle will be able to come pick you up and then drop you off at your destination. The service can be shared to help with efficiencies. So if there's rides that are coming in that are traveling in similar directions, they'll book multiple people in the same vehicle that to help with the overall efficiency in the service. And you can set parameters around that on how much out of your way you want customers to travel based on that, and a few other things just to help with the quality of service. So how do cities and regions typically use microtransit? We've identified 4 key reasons that really apply in the Grand Forks, East Grand Forks area. So the first one is filling gaps in the existing transit network, and you'll see how that comes through in some of our recommendations with the service area that's been selected in East Grand Forks. But another big piece of it is connecting to fixed routes too, and that's sometimes hand in hand with that first one. It really helps expand the reach of existing fixed route services to areas that might be a bit more challenging to serve with a traditional fixed route. And the third piece is to convert underperforming fixed routes. So sometimes there might be an existing route out there today that's just not doing very well, ridership's low, so on-demand can come in and kind of provide an alternative approach to hopefully increase ridership in those areas. And then the final piece that kind of wraps it all together is just increasing the flexible mobility options and kind of tying into that coverage piece too and expanding the reach. One important thing to note, or a couple things I guess, and how it relates to traditional dial-a-ride services and paratransit services. So they can often resemble each other and seem very similar, but there are a few key differences that set them apart, starting with flexibility. So going back to the true on-demand base that Microtransit provides, riders can book their trip whenever they want, as opposed to paratransit services, which are typically 24 hours in advance. And then as trip requests come in, the service can adjust and adapt to the most efficient routing, things like that in real time based on what requests are coming and what destinations need to be served. The second key difference is the overall audience. So typically microtransit services are open to all, whereas paratransit are more limited typically to those with disabilities. And then the final piece is geography. So microtransit services tend to be a bit smaller, really focusing on those areas that are harder to serve with fixed route, while a paratransit service area is typically much larger, oftentimes region-wide. So part of the feasibility analysis was looking at the 4 zones that had been identified. So you can see those mapped up here. 1, which was essentially the entire city boundary of East Grand Forks, and then 3 on the Grand Forks side, kind of spread out throughout the city boundaries. And we started with just identifying what those preliminary zones were based on the recommendations from the Transit Development Plan. And then we did an existing conditions analysis, and I'll share the results of what we found for East Grand Forks. But this is where we're looking at existing routes, future population employment growth, demographic data, and then what destinations are available in those areas. And then from there, we refined those zones to ultimately carry into the design and simulation phase to help forecast some ridership. So when looking at East Grand Forks, the existing conditions, there's 2 existing routes there. You can see the ridership there along with the ranking of the overall system. So generally speaking, the existing fixed routes, Route 4 and 6, are on the lower performing end compared to the remaining routes on the CAT system in terms of overall ridership, but also passengers per revenue hour, which are a couple key metrics when looking at performance of fixed route transit services. And then just looking at population employment density, we compared each zone to each other, but also to the region overall. And you can see East Grand Forks follows similar trends to the overall region in terms of population employment density, and then a bit of household and job growth expected as well. So what we found in terms of both opportunities and challenges for the zone when we were doing our analysis. So on the opportunity side, Route 4 and 6 provide a nice opportunity for potential replacement for on-demand service, given the current performance and just the areas they serve, vehicles available, budget, that sort of thing. But then there's also this opportunity to expand coverage citywide. So we know there's challenges with serving kind of the southern area of East Grand Forks. So this would provide that opportunity to expand that reach and provide transit access to more residents within the community. And then connecting into downtown Grand Forks and MTC to really give that connection to the rest of the system as well. We want to make sure that that's maintained because that's what existing routes are doing today. On the challenges side though, and I put considerations on there too, because the things that could be an opportunity, but just things that we have to kind of work through and talk through and as we look at implementation. But it is a somewhat larger zone size overall, so that has some impacts on potential wait times, trip lengths, that sort of thing. Vehicle availability was a concern throughout the process on just what's available and what would need to be procured to provide this service. and then just general concerns of replacing fixed route with the new service model and how that impacts customers as well. So from that analysis that we moved into the forecasting piece of it, and the table here shows ridership estimates for the different scenarios we looked at, comparing the different zones. So you can see some low, medium, high estimates there, just to give a range of what could be expected once service is up and running. So in total, you can see the East Grand Forks Zone 1A, there's what we kind of landed on for the preferred zone, was the top performer of all of the areas we looked at. The second East Grand Forks zone there was kind of a different, or a partial fixed route replacement that we did just to kind of compare and see how it performed, to help with some interim phasing work. But in general, East Grand Forks was the top performer of the 4 general zones that we looked at in terms of ridership. So getting into the launch piece of this, so we laid out kind of a phased launch plan based on the analysis and the stakeholder feedback we got. This was really focused on East Grand Forks, which is, you'll see in the draft plan, or the memo in the agenda. But we set it up to be a phased approach to recognize kind of where we are at today in terms of resources, and just being able to kind of test out some certain things to be able to move into our full service plan. So you'll see up here on the top left is where we broke it out into a couple different pilot phases, where we start with one vehicle. There's a vehicle available today to be able to run and test out the service, and really just looking at that evening service to run this and test out the software, how customers feel about it. Really just work through some of the initial kinks before moving into the second pilot, which is where we start thinking about bringing in another vehicle, looking at that all-day service to ultimately get to that full service launch that you see in the dark blue, which will be running all day long with 2 to 3 vehicles running in the zone within East Grand Forks. And then ultimately, we've set this up to kind of provide a model as we look at future expansion. So we've called out the 3 other zones we looked at as part of this plan, with the industrial park, Northern Grand Forks, and Southern Grand Forks. But the goal is to be able to work through this pilot and then the full service launch over the course of 2 years to really set up this model and kind of understand how it functions and performs, and before considering additional areas. And the goal with that phased approach and kind of starting small is to really build that internal expertise, manage risk thoughtfully, foster community trust, and then demonstrate the value and return on investment before going with the full launch. So how do we get to launch? As we mentioned, this is an implementation plan as well. So we set up this step-by-step guide to kind of walk through some of the key decisions that will need to be discussed and worked through to help get to service launch. And you'll see on that graphic there are months called out kind of based on an August plan adoption, but this is just a template to be used and really can be implemented at any time, just kind of based on the rough outline of where these different decision points land. Also, some of these can kind of work, or they can be occurring at the same time too, especially the first 3 there. But we'll kind of walk through each of these at a high level. The plan goes into more detail on what each of these decision points are and what some of the things that be considered and the rationale behind some of these as well. But the first one is deciding on a service model and what the operational framework looks like. So part of this effort did look at different operational models ranging from direct operations, so cities area transit, providing buses, or in East Grand Forks, providing buses, operators really managing the day-to-day operations, to the other end of the spectrum of kind of a turnkey approach where a third party comes in and does full management of the system, including hiring of operators, providing vehicles, that sort of thing. But what we landed on is, for this plan, is the direct operations model, and this is really kind of aim to help build that institutional knowledge and committing to the jobs that exist today with existing operators, help continue to develop the workforce, and then really just build on that local knowledge and understanding that you already have with riders in the community. And then another key piece of this too, and when we look at guiding principles for what the service design looks like, the goal is to complement and not compete with existing services that are doing well. So part of the initial analysis was understanding what fixed route services were doing. So if a route's performing really well, we don't want to come in and take ridership away from that. We want it to complement that and help grow both services together. And then meeting coverage goals as well. As we talked about, the existing fixed routes in East Grand Forks are pretty limited in the areas they serve, so this would help expand that coverage to the full city boundary. Which goes into the next decision point of proof of concept service area definition. So really refining that, kind of locking in what that initial boundary looks like. We've suggested what the boundary could look like here in the map, really focusing on the developed areas. You can see some of the areas within city limits were cut out just to kind of help clean it up a little bit. But the East Grand Forks zone has a relatively compact geography overall. There's some key connection points and regional integration, and it helps provide that clear pathway for future expansion into other areas as well. The third point is more on the technology side of things. So this is where you would need to evaluate and assess existing capabilities, consider different alternatives and opportunities as necessary. So EcoLane is the current software provider that could provide this service. And based on initial discussions, it sounds like they're likely to be able to meet a lot of the capabilities that are desired and needed for microtransit service in the region. But this phase would really be working through that in more detail to understand what their full capabilities are and if that'll be meet what's desired for this service in the region. And then really just reviewing how that kind of fits in with all systems, right? And part of this the technology discussion too is understanding the staff training needs and development too, and comparing an existing platform that dispatch operators are familiar with to potentially having to bring in a new provider if the existing one isn't able to meet those capabilities. Moving into the fourth decision point, this is looking at the staffing side of things and the workforce development. So kind of based on the initial on the service model and operational framework, but really starting to think about what training looks like, scheduling, and performance management. So suggesting cross-training between fixed route operators and microtransit operators to help when backups are needed and provide a little bit more flexibility in the service and scheduling of drivers as well. And then as service grows, just considering what workforce scaling looks like too, because obviously as service is growing, additional drivers will be needed and starting to think about what that might look like as well. And then the final piece is the engagement side of things and really looking at brand and market development. So when we say engagement, a lot of this is really going to be focused on education. Since it is a new service model for the region, we really want riders to truly understand what it is and be able to kind of jump in right away and use the service without any major hiccups. So we've broken out an engagement or a public engagement plan into 3 different phases, starting with that foundation building and awareness, so really educating the public and stakeholders in what it is. And then the second phase comes around launch time and providing that support through launch to make sure that riders are able to book their rides, understand how to do that and how the system will kind of work. And the goal there is really to help grow ridership, right? We don't want to lose ridership as we bring in the service, so making it as easy as possible for those customers. And then the third phase would be focused more on the expansion piece. And a lot of that is driven by advocacy and having conversations with partners, other stakeholders to really help grow the service and look at future areas as well. And then throughout all of that, there's going to be ongoing communication and feedback systems in place to help understand what riders are feeling about the service, what other needs might exist, that sort of thing, to help continue refining as you implement it. So then the fun part is the budget, right? So understanding what potential budgets might look like with a microtransit service, and then also comparing that to what's out there today. So we did break it out for the first couple of years of service, what we could expect based on typical operating expenses for cities area transit. And you can see the year 1 and year 2 operations listed there. Year 1 a bit lower because it's starting out a bit smaller, but kind of ranging in that $360,000 to $530,000 range for operations annually. And just a quick comparison for what the existing routes do today, those are kind of in the ballpark of $400,000 annually to provide the 2 existing routes in East Grand Forks today. The second piece of that influences the budget is the fleet, right? So we know there's 1 vehicle available today, and that's why we've kind of built that into the phased launch approach, but the full service plan does go up to 3 vehicles, so we're starting to think about the procurement of additional vehicles and how we can kind of build that into our budgets. And then the final piece is marketing engagement, and this is really kind of dependent on what local preferences are and priorities in terms of engagement. But this can include digital, social media, attending events, different outreach opportunities to help spread the word, paid media, that sort of thing, to really help develop the brand, wrap vehicles, that sort of thing. But I think the most important piece about all this is the plan does include a funding strategy to help identify potential sources for essentially all aspects of what you're seeing here. We've identified a lot of MnDOT opportunities to help on the operating side, the technical side, the capital side, to really help get this going and work through the implementation phases. And then a large part of this process too, once service is up and running, is measuring success and understanding what might need to be refined, what things to consider as we look at continuing to work through that phase launch and then ultimately to future expansion potential. So the plan does identify key performance indicators that will be used for scaling decisions and future expansion. We do suggest allowing 1 full year of operations and data collection prior to making any major changes, but a lot of these metrics that you see here and the data that you get out of the system and software from Microtransit allows you to kind of fine-tune things along the way too to help address some of these key things without making major changes. But some of the KPIs I would consider fall into ridership, efficiency, and then quality of service. So just understanding how many rides people are taking overall, but also how many individual rides or trips per rider as well, to see how often they're taking the service, to understand if it's something that's working well for them. In other words, meaning they take it a lot, or if they take it once or twice and then stop, then there might be something up there, and we wanted to dig into that. And then looking at productivity measures, and then cost per passenger trip, and then quality of service metrics as well. So what are wait times, how long are rides, and then what's overall customer satisfaction. And then we also wanted to provide kind of a peer review of another agency that's doing something similar. So we identified Brainerd Baxter area, who runs a traditional dial-a-ride service today, where riders have to call in, but they're currently in the process of transitioning their service to a mobile app to be the on-demand service. You can see a recent posting on their Facebook page about what that new app will look like. So it's actually expected to go live here in a few days or next week on July 28th. But they really transitioned their existing service where, like I said, was more dial-a-ride to this mobile app booking service that you can do at any time. And it's really focused on the Baxter and Brainerd city limits. So kind of a good peer to look at and have future conversations with as East Grand Forks looks to implement the service within their city as well, just to understand some lessons learned, that sort of thing too. We've had conversations with Nancy, and it sounds like we have some contacts to be able to kind of understand that a little more and have future conversations of how that service will function within that region, especially once it gets up and running, kind of understanding as they work through that initial launch of the service and how it goes for them. And then to start wrapping things up, just kind of touching on the key takeaways. So overall, the plan does outline a bold yet pragmatic vision for really transforming regional mobility. It's a big change from looking at fixed route to microtransit. And we really did this through that phased community-centered service approach. So the recommendations were shaped by public and stakeholder engagement and really aligned with operational realities. And that's kind of what drove the phased launch of understanding where we're at today and how do we kind of build ourselves up to get to that preferred service plan after year one. And that's where that clear roadmap for launching that service comes into play. And then East Grand Forks specifically helps address current transit gaps, but also creates a really nice learning environment for that future expansion. And this is supported by those performance metrics, stakeholder partnerships, and then the funding strategy to help carry this forward. I think this is my last slide, and I'll open up for questions. But just looking at next steps. So, like I said, we'll be bringing this to the MPO for approval next month in just a couple weeks here. And then following that is really when we'll work through the implementation steps, which kind of laid out over a 6-month time frame, but can kind of start whenever Cities Area Transit and East Grand Forks is ready to kind of continue working through the process to ultimately launch the service. I just threw a lot at you, so feel free to.
Nancy, you got something?
Yeah, I just want to be clear, so just everybody's aware, since we've already applied for a 2026 operating application through MnDOT, we would not start operating the microtransit or look at it at least until 2027. This would be something that I'd have to work through Cities Area Transit, which is currently going through a change in their directors. So there's a lot that we're processing right now. So between this winter and the spring, that'll give me the ability to maybe visit once or twice more with Aaron and my urban manager to kind of see where other funding is available and how MnDOT's going to want us to kind of roll this out. They do have different expansion and different types of funding available, but it's not a quick and easy process to change your service because we have to provide service levels and different things like that. We would have to look at putting in for a bus. Bus purchases right now are out 18 months to 2 years. With the tariffs, everything's changing. So again, work in progress. So you've got a lot of really good information here that I won't cover the next time I bring it back to discuss microtransit. It would be more the logistics of how we want to start it, if we want to start it, if Cities Area Transit's willing to take it on, how our technology will work with it. So it'll be just a little bit more of the nuts and bolts. But yeah, I wouldn't foresee this until next year when we start the application process again. We also have another peer review with Mankato that has recently started a pilot project in their summer months. Without their university students there, that sounds like it's working well for the community in terms of like children and things like that, which may also be something that we consider as well, maybe moving from night to summer to try that as a full day and then rolling it into a full-time service as well. So that's something I'll talk with Aaron about as well as Ben, and we'll get back to you. But I think losing Route 12 during COVID, we really are providing very minimal service. It hasn't been great for people to use it simply because of it's hour-to-hour stops for a lot of the locations, and or it's just not practical for people to use it. Now this, they might be able to get on the bus quicker within 10, 15 minutes, connect to another bus that'll get them out to the mall instead of in an hour in a 20, 25-minute window, which I think people are more looking for. But when it becomes a long trip, it just isn't worth it for them. So So lots to discuss in the future, and it'll come back, but I think it's worth approving and trying to move forward. It gives us the ability to work through MnDOT and our feds to see how we can afford to do this without seeing an increase to the local share.
Anyone have any questions? Mr. Mayor?
If we move forward with approving, are we approving timelines or are we just approving just the project
We're just approving the plan.
plan? Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Just to make
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
We like
Yeah.
to just hand it over and let you guys make your decisions that in the timeline you need.
Okay. Mr. Helms?
To me, I don't understand quite fully how this can turn out to be cost-effective for anybody. It sounds to me like what you're looking to do is to create a taxi service or an Uber service or something like that. Because if you start doing door-to-door service, which sounds like that's what you're kind of looking at doing here,
This is not door to door. It's still stop to stop.
Yep.
so where would your stops be then, or what? Because you're not, obviously, you're going to go to the places you don't have bus stops now. So how would you determine how to,
We would be adding some stops, but it would be within, what, a quarter mile?
At the very least, a quarter mile.
Yep, so there'd be circular areas, we'd have a stop. So, but it's not a door-to-door service like Dial-A-Ride. So let's say if I was on the south end, the middle school might be one pickup location. 6th Street might be another pickup location. So they would have to walk or get to that stop. But it wouldn't be something where you would call in your address and we would pick you up on the corner. So that is Dial-A-Ride service where it's door to door. This, we wouldn't be able, it wouldn't function well if we did it as a stop to stop.
exactly, it would be really costly and one or two vehicles would not be enough.
Yeah. No.
That's
no.
the thing that-
No. So that's not the way it would work. Another good example of how they're doing something similar to this is on NDSU's campus. So somebody calls and they have a ride and they'll say, we'll pick you up at the corner of this. They may have to walk 3 or 4 blocks, but then they get picked up and then they get brought to either a bus that they would transfer onto or to another location where they could then walk home. So,
And then also, how would that work as far as the bus routes now today? Is that going to interfere with their schedules? I mean,
no,
if they're
those
gonna
bus
be-
routes would go away.
If they're going to, pardon?
Those bus routes would go away in East Grand Forks.
Yeah, okay, I understand, but is that going to be a problem with the bus routes, like to get those people, if you're going to transfer them from here to meet another bus somewhere, is that going to affect the time frame in there from the time you,
Well,
so
what
that
we
bus
would,
going to have to sit there and wait for your driver to get there to take care of them?
well, we
To
would
drop them
have,
off?
yeah, we would have 2 buses, running, in different motions. Let's say if I got picked up on the north end, we would pick up a number of different customers at different stops within a 15-minute time period and drop them off at the transit center downtown. From there, they would have a number of different bus options to get onto, depending upon where they wanted to go.
So the wait time could still be the same, be a long deal then possibly, depending on when you get them to that.
It depends. It depends on where they want to go, but it, for the most part, would be quicker. Because if I wanted to get picked up at Hugo's right now, it's hour by hour. So I either get on at, let's say, for example, 11:07, or I get on at 12:07. Those are my 2 options. They're an hour apart. Now, if I wanted to get picked up with the Microtransit at Hugo's, and it's 11 o'clock, they may say, we'll be there at 11:10 or 11:15, and then we'll get you to the transfer center at 11:18, and then you can get on a different bus. So you're not waiting, if you miss that time frame, another hour to get onto another
So
bus.
you're providing a customized service, basically,
Yeah,
for one resident or whatever I'd say at that point in time, right? Because if that's all you're going to have is one rider. And why would we want to get rid of our?
No, we wouldn't be just picking up one rider and bringing them to the transit center. It kind of runs similarly to a bus service, a fixed route. They will be driving around, people will be scheduling, they will be picking them up and then taking them to the transfer center every so often.
Why would we want to drop the 2 routes we have now to do this? It does not. No.
We have 2 routes, but they essentially one runs up 220 and around on the east side, one runs up 220 around on the west side, but none of them go to the south end. If you're on the east side, it's still a 45-minute to an hour pickup, whereas this, if you're on the north end, you might be able to be picked up quicker than rather at a specific time.
If I could just jump in.
Ben?
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Helms, I think the goal here is to increase ridership of the service. And right now, since there's only one pickup time every hour, nobody wants to ride it. They're using other services. So I think, Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, we're trying to increase the availability of riders, and the main objective would be, yes, we go pick someone up at Hugo's, but since now that bus basically can drive wherever, it's
Yep.
not a fixed route, they're just going from stop to stop based on how people have scheduled it, that ideally there should be more riders on the bus at every time someone gets picked up.
But that's my point exactly. If you want to increase ridership, and if that's the case, and if that's what happens, there's no way you're going to do all that ridership with 2 vehicles. If it's going to increase it like you're expecting it to happen, it's going to be a very costly venture.
It's still probably more effective than what's going on now.
Yeah, and I can just chime in on that a little bit. So I pulled back to this slide here just to look at existing route performance. So right now, when we look at passengers per revenue hour, so how many people are on the bus every hour, it falls just under 5. So I think our goal with the microtransit service would be to increase that, and that would come through having a more flexible service that kind of meets them where they are in some ways to make it a little bit more convenient, but then also by expanding it to other areas as well to expand the reach and number of residents that have access to the service. So I think we'd be kind of comparing it to what we're seeing on those routes today, and that's part of what that phase launch would do, and the KPIs are looking at how it's performing, but our goal would be to get above what we're seeing out there today.
The customers that we're losing right now are people that would use it to get to places of employment, because it's just taking them too long to get from where they're at to try to connect. I've had people on the south end that have tried to get out to Altru. They've lost that service. So now they're either using Uber, or they had to buy a car, or they're riding a bike. But the people that can ride or that need to get places that have the day, yeah, they may not necessarily see this, as convenient right away, because they're used to the time that they get on the bus, and they're used to the time that they get off the bus, and which connection that they have. But there's a lot of people at Crystal Sugar, for example, they don't ride the bus because there's no bus service that goes to Crystal Sugar or our industrial park. So getting people to and from there, we don't have a service right now that does that. If I worked at Altru, if I weren't anywhere other than on the current fixed route, I'm riding a bike or I'm purchasing a car. Or if I'm on it, now, if I have an 8 o'clock time frame to get there, if I miss that pickup, now I'm late for work because I missed that pickup and I can't get on for another hour. So it really does provide a valuable service to the people that don't always attend or come to some of these meetings, which is going to your employment. So that's the one that we're hoping to kind of pick up on, where we see it would be valuable. And then the people that are current riders, they will see it as well as more convenient to them.
So your example you just gave me, so the way I look at that, is that if somebody on the point calls you up and says, I got to get to the industrial park to work, that to me sounds like a personalized service. You're going to pick them up and take them to the industrial park, not to the next bus stop.
No, we're going to pick them up and take them to another stop where they'd get on a different bus to get to the industrial park.
Where would that bus come from if you're going to drop the 2 routes you have?
If we have 2 microtransit routes running, one on the north end and one on the south end, the south end one would probably pick them up, drop them off somewhere at a designated stop. The north end then would, be driving by that. They still look similarly to a fixed route where they would kind of circle in general areas. It would just, you would be able to call and say, hey, I'm on this stop, can I get picked up? They would circle by because they would know you were there, rather than stopping at stops just for the sake of saying, I'm stopping here. And if there's no one there, then they go on to the next stop. Whereas this way, they know when they're making that circle, they're going to stop at locations where people actually are, rather than just saying at 11:07, I'm stopping at this corner, whether people are there or not. So, it's...
And these are, I think, great discussions of how the service is set up, but it really does play into how we've kind of set up the implementation plan too. Like, these are all of those details that would be determined and kind of figured out as you work through this process prior to launching the service. I think Microtransit is a very flexible service and can kind of be set up however you want. What Nancy was just describing is definitely a very good use case for it. There's also situations where it does have, I don't want to say door to door, but a little bit more of that custom trip, right, to drop you off at the industrial park, right, if that's where you're trying to go. Those are all things that can be determined as you're procuring a software, understanding what their capabilities are, what you want the service to look like too, and that's what the implementation plan kind of sets you up for to help work through those conversations.
Yeah, it's a work in progress too. I mean, if the industrial park, if a majority of the shifts start at 7, well, then we know that we're going to be doing more drop-off and pickups at specific time periods, peak time periods. And then after that, we work our way back out. But we don't know that until we try it, So.
Anyone else?
I'm done for now.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just wanted to say I appreciate how hard Aaron and Eric have worked on this, and they've done an excellent job. And we've got a lot of really good, valuable information that we can use moving forward. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything else, Teri?
No, like I said, once we give you guys this plan and as you work through it, the MPO will support everything that, work with Nancy to get that funding, as well as, moving forward, it's connecting your community even better than it is right now. So.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to number 3, update on the Safe Streets for All plan. Mr. Weber.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. I feel like you've probably heard from me 100 times on this one, so I promise this isn't a jab at Aaron, who's one of my favorite people. I won't be as long as Aaron, I promise, since you have seen this study quite a few times, and we actually recently, about 2 weeks ago, had a very, very good meeting, very good conversation around everything with this study. Sorry, I'll stall a little bit more. I'll tell a couple jokes. Really what I'm here tonight for is just to give you some updates on kind of incorporating a lot of the different comments that we heard from that dual council meeting, as well as some of the public feedback that we got throughout this entire process, and kind of let you know what the next few weeks look like with this, since we are in that nice adoption phase of the presentation. So, thank you. Excellent. So I really, like I said, tonight is just me here updating you on what we've incorporated as far as comments, and then also when we keep talking about this adoption process, what that actually means and what that's going to mean for the city of East Grand Forks. So first thing, pretty nice to be able to run through chapters 1 through 6 and say not much in the updating in those. Those were ones that we had some brief discussions around, but more things around some text edits, a little bit of an update, especially when it came to the public engagement, kind of wrapping up things like that. So nothing too crazy on our edits there. Chapter 7 is where we really did get a lot of good feedback, incorporated a lot of different conversations and some different things that were brought up throughout different meetings. So a big thing here was some of these cost estimates on the facility type. So we talked pretty heavily around the countermeasures. There was 13 different countermeasures, 6 of them that felt a little bit more oriented towards bikes, pedestrians, while 7 of them felt a little bit more automotive and vehicular. While all of them really impacted the roadway safety. And so what we did here was we just broke down some of those different implementation strategies on a cost estimate idea. So when you look on these are things like what an average estimated cost of a roundabout is, or a protected bike lane, or painted crosswalks, things like that. So really, this is just some feedback that we heard of people want to see what those implementations they look like. And then another thing that we updated here was the segment project tables. So these were really those project tables that we had based on locations. We added a couple different tables on here for 2 different things. One, updated anticipated project impacts. So I know we talked about these at the dual council meeting, but things like what right-of-way impacts will be expected on a project, or access, or utilities, trees. So really trying to give you all some of the insight of here's maybe some of the anticipated project impacts when it comes to what could happen. And then one of the things that we heard pretty heavily was a perceived difficulty of implementation. So this was something that we heard both from both sides of the river on engineering, but also from Council President Larson brought this up in a really good way of when we maybe start talking about roundabouts, those can have a perceived difficulty of implementation from city staff, and knowing that maybe this is going to be one that the public pushes back a little bit more on. Not necessarily saying that it's a good or bad thing, but maybe giving some of the staff a little bit more insight into maybe some additional engagement or some additional conversations around the data as to why these strategies are being implemented. So this was not as much led by us as the consultant. This was really coordinated through both cities to make sure that it was city staff's insight as to, hey, what are some of these perceived difficulty of implementation strategies? So. And then another thing was on our appendix items, I did a couple different updates. One of the ones that I thought was really enjoyable and I kind of came from that dual council meeting was potentially another roundabout in our draft around that fire department over on Bigland Road. It's really easy to say some of these things as if that's going to happen tomorrow. Well, that's not exactly what it is, but it's to try to give some insight as to maybe some shared different facilities that could be utilized, as well as maybe some areas where there can be increased safety. And so I know we showed the roundabout out by Bigland near the Louis Murray Bridge, and that one, I think everybody was pretty excited about it. This was one that kind of boiled up in some of the conversations as well, and one of the things that I think is really important to note is when designing these roundabouts, what kind of roundabout are we going to use where? Because we know that it's easy to use the term roundabout as if all of them look the exact same, but looking at ones like in Grand Forks, the Confusion Corner at 5th and Belmont, which is a mini roundabout that's a lot lower impact. So emergency vehicles, buses can still make it through really easily. And so looking at where we're designing some of these, or at least suggesting some of them, is important. River Road and 17th is another good example of one that I know keeps coming up as a conversation, and at least one that I feel is pretty well supported by the community. So some of these are really good opportunities for grant applications for the city to be able to put in once those safety implementation grants come out. And then the last thing on here is I did a little bit more of an update with the Bigland Road information. So one of the things that we showed along Bigland Road was a protected bike lane all the way along, which would have jersey barriers and two-way cycle track all the way along. And I do want to bring up the conversation that we got to have yesterday, because I thought it was really good comments, was we know that some of the sidewalks have been reconstructed in the past around that area along Bigland. I think partners with Safe Kids and things like that. So I think there's been so much good momentum already in this area, and even looking back on some of the maps and knowing that these sidewalks were designed to connect to that middle school out on Bigland Road. So these would really be complementary and really act as a way for all users of the roadway to be safer. And so once you start putting bicyclists out on the sidewalks, well, you have a lot of people walking there. So you start to have some conflict points. Putting cyclists just out on the middle of the road, we also know can create some major conflict points, because then you have roads and you have cyclists, which are never safe. And so one of the things that can be really beneficial here is a protected buffered bike lane that goes all the way from the Louis Murray Bridge out to the middle school and really has some separated facilities. So you can get all of the kids who are in that neighborhood out on the Point neighborhood biking out to the middle school and things like that, but still keeping them separated from vehicles, making their crossing at different crossings a lot safer. I'm going to stop right there and make sure if anybody has any questions. I went over some stuff pretty quick, but I didn't know if we wanted to jump into any of those other chapters or anything touched on. Excellent. So the last one, and we talked a little bit about this during the dual council meeting, but I think it's really important to kind of let you all know when we keep using the term adoption, what we actually are meaning by that adoption. And this is something to adopt within the MPO, but also for the cities as some different measurements and some different ways to kind of help continue the conversation around safe streets for all. And so some of the things that we like to talk about are building ownership. We saw this with our peer-reviewed communities. Engaged leaders are really the best way to both get good grants in with the feds, but also really create some really good community trust, because it shows that you all are viewing safe streets as important as the public is, which we know was something that we heard consistently throughout this. So I have some key points here, but these are just some ways to kind of measure the different strategies and the implementation, and then also be able to look at the safety implementation throughout the entire process once we're done with the study. So that first one is just kind of looking at progress and transparency. The next one is what that measuring success looks like. So this is things like maybe looking at some crash data and analysis. This is really good partnerships with the MPO to be able to kind of keep up some of this information as they're moving through things, but also make sure that policy alignment is a key point here. So looking at your CIP, looking at the state and the local and the county, and then also some different projects that are happening from SS4A. And then also the actual implementation on these. So measuring how did those actually work? How did those actually bring down crashes, or at least bring down the high injury network? And these are things that are really easy for us to look back on 10 years ago and see the changes. We'll be able to see those same kind of changes with some of the implementations here too. And then the last part is that transparency with community engagement. And so making sure that you're getting out there. I think it's really important for the city to continue to engage with the public when it comes to these different strategies. And so it's why we put things like the perceived level of difficulty, because that perceived level of difficulty is also a perceived level of required engagement on some of these projects. And so it's easy to draw really cool renderings and things that we feel are going to be really impactful, but unless you're talking to the community in that way, it sometimes can fall under deaf ears. Even if it's a really good strategy, the public will just see it as construction cones and not going to be beneficial for their neighborhood, when really the intention there is to support safer streets. So those are the three kind of sections on that last chapter 8. The final report is here. You should all have it as council members, but also I would love to answer any other questions while we're here.
Any questions for Blue?
Excellent.
None?
Perfect. Well, I'll be back in a week.
Thank you. All right, then, we'll skip on to number 4, consider 2025 winter activity fees. Jeremy's gone, so Reed is going to do this one.
All right,
Thanks, Councilmember Riepel. Yeah, Jeremy's on vacation this week, so just wanted to touch base prior to the upcoming council meeting on the proposed increase for winter fees. If there are any questions that I can help research and extend back to Jeremy, I'll certainly do that. But proposing a 3% increase across all the winter fee activities, and that's reflected in the proposed fee structure that Jeremy included in the packet. And that's with those increases anticipating an additional $4,200 in revenue that would be in effect for this fall registration.
Any questions for Reed? Mr. Helms?
I just have a comment. I was looking at over and man, if you got a family of 3 kids playing hockey, it's costly. Are we overpricing ourselves? Are we pricing ourselves out of people doing stuff?
The price is comparable to most of the local communities. We're considerably less than Grand Forks. You can double that in Grand Forks almost.
Yeah, and I'll get back to you. I don't know for certain. It's not listed on the sheet. We used to have a family cap in place that if you had a certain number of family members registered and you reached a cap, that was the max you had to pay. I think that that's still in effect.
I think it
but
is too.
I'll double back to this because that cap usually raises in association with the increase in the fee. I don't have it off the top of my head what that cap was last year, but that historically has been in place for winter activities.
Okay, if you do that, I'd appreciate it.
Anyone else? Hearing none. Need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Pokrzywinski motions. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Peterson. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Motion adjourned.